Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I am talking about the Doctor Who 50th Anniversary Special, Day of the Doctor. Now, I've repeatedly said in my reviews of Doctor Who that I've been watching Doctor Who almost half my life. I started watching old Tom Baker episodes just out of idle curiosity on my PBS station back home when I was a freshman in high school. And well, that was some years ago, and now here we are. And just looking back at it all, back then, watching those old episodes, Doctor Who had been over for a good number of years when I had started watching it, and it was sort of this odd relic, sort of an old favorite among sci-fi fans with tastes in quirky entertainment. And then, of course, came back in 2005 and ended up being more successful than anyone could have ever imagined. And now here we are at this 50th anniversary. And wow, what a story. And it's interesting that in a way this is actually kind of two stories in one. You have the Doctor going out and stopping aliens who want to take over the Earth because, well, that's what the Doctor does, and you can't have the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who if the Doctor doesn't save the Earth from some aliens. And this time, of course, we're dealing with the Zygons, who have actually not been seen since 1975. And this is a really great reinterpretation and update of them. I really enjoyed that. But honestly, all of that stuff was really kind of incidental, but let's talk about that aspect of the show first. First of all, it was really cool, of course, to see once again the Coal Hill School, the sign for the Foreman, i.e. Foreman Scrapyard. Not the first time the Doctor Who has touched on that again. They did that during the 7th Doctor's run. There was a fight between U.N.I.T and the Daleks in the junkyard. And I've read that apparently, if you pay attention, you can see that Ian Chesterton's name, one of the first Doctor Who companions, is apparently on the board of directors at that school. So that was very cool, although I'm not exactly sure where Clara picked up a teaching certification, but hey, that never stopped the Doctor from being a teacher at a British school, so why would that stop her? And of course, it certainly was very cool watching the TARDIS be pulled around by a helicopter. Not sure why they just didn't get a truck. That probably would have been a lot simpler. But not as fast, and I guess time was of the essence. And of course, it's fun to watch Matt Smith dangle out of the TARDIS. We've seen that not for the first time. And of course, just the idea of just literally seeing a TARDIS flying over London, not being a special effect. It's really there, attached to a helicopter, flying over modern London. It's quite a kick. And it's also, let's be honest here, it's a little bit of what we in the States like to call waving the flag. And you can't really blame the show for that. And Doctor Who has basically kind of become a British institution. It's really the great flagship show of the BBC. It's the most successful science fiction. I guess you can't. I don't know if you maybe would say the most successful science fiction show in history, but it's unquestionably the longest running science fiction show in history. And if it's not the most successful sci-fi show in history, it sure as heck is up there. And it really is, like I said, just kind of an institute of modern British culture. So you can't really, I certainly can't fault the Brits for taking a moment to, as I said, wave the flag a little bit. And of course, this is certainly carried on in the mind of Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, where she mentions that when she's talking about Jack Harkness's time travel gadget, it's like, well, we couldn't let this fall into the hands of the Americans. Have you seen their movies? Yeah, this is a little bit of a pot calling the kettle black, coming from a show where whenever aliens invade the Earth, they decide to start with the UK first. This small kind of island country that you could fit several times over into California. But what's interesting about that line there, despite being slightly annoying to American sensibilities, I won't lie, but Well, subtlety is not an American virtue, so I can concede the point to the British on that one. Anyway, what's interesting is that if you remember, there's an old Doctor Who episode from the 70s with the Third Doctor, where they're talking about some kind of the codes to some sort of doomsday device. And the brigadier, her father says, naturally, Great Britain was the only nation that could be trusted with this. And the Doctor sarcastically goes, "Oh yes, of course. All the other nations are full of foreigners." So apparently, the brigadier passed a little bit of that on to his daughter, and apparently Kate Lethbridge Stewart has not quite realized that she's supposed to be working for the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, not British Shield, which people on Doctor Who tend to forget that unit is not. It is supposed to be an arm of the United Nations. So by keeping this, thing, Jack Harkness's time travel gadget, exclusively for her own country, Kate's being kind of, well, let's just say a bit nationalistic. But you know what? Despite her horrible breach of international regulations or whatever, like I said, this episode is there to kind of let the folks over in the UK wave the flag a little bit, and they've certainly earned it. I love Doctor Who so much, and this is a fantastic celebration of it. So, you know what? A little bit of ribbing, throwing a little ribbing America's way. I'm not going to complain. And honestly, at least they do it in better taste than some of the previous knocks that were taken at America back when Stephen Moffat was running the show. Yeah, let's have aliens vaporize the president of the United States on live TV. And man, do not get me started on that Torchwood Miracle Day BS. Okay, anyway, so let's get on and talk about cool stuff. Of course, it's very cool to see the the unit scientist lady running around in the Fourth Doctor's scarf. You kind of would have to think that there's probably some Doctor fanboys and fangirls actually at UNIT. So the idea, I guess this is what I sort of assume was meant to be going on there, is that they'd pick up on little bits of the history of the Doctor and whatnot, and maybe even be fans of him. That's great. You see, one thing I've always kind of hoped that we would do actually is someday like reveal that UNIT has kept Bessie in storage for all of these years and kept it up to modern specs, and just we get to see the Doctor drive the Who-mobile one more time. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, seriously, go back and watch some old John Pertwee episodes. Bessie was a kick. But anyway, kind of getting into things. Another thing that was really great about this episode is obviously they spent some money on this. The big thing on the Time War, well, I wouldn't quite say that's up there with Star Wars, because, well, if you look carefully at the soldiers' uniforms, it looks suspiciously like some sports equipment that has been repainted. But nonetheless, obviously the BBC was willing to put some pretty nice money into this, and it's not quite Industrial Light and Magic, but it's certainly up there, and it's really, really good quality stuff for TV, and it's excellent quality for Doctor Who. Even New Who has at times suffered from obviously trying to save a few bucks here and there. But anyway, that was really nicely done. I love that. And I definitely loved the Doctor just using the TARDIS as a battering ram to take out some Daleks. I mean, the Daleks call that guy the oncoming storm for a reason. I guess as British as a show like Doctor Who is, even the Doctor isn't above being direct in the style that Americans prefer from time to time. Anyway, and I love the fact that they called it the Omega Arsenal. Now, of course, Omega is the last letter of the Latin alphabet, and of course is been a symbol of destruction and doomsday and all this other stuff. But what some of the fans of newer Who might not be familiar with is that Omega was actually the name of basically one of the three people who founded time, essentially like the Time Lords, who took the Gallifreyans from just being Gallifreyans to being the Time Lords. The other one is, of course, Razalon. And the third person, the Doctor Who in the 80s never quite named who that was. And I think that the way I interpreted a lot of those old 80s episodes is that they were kind of going to hint that maybe in some way this was some sort of past incarnation of the Doctor, that the Doctor was much, 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 much older than we had previously been led to believe. And of course, that would conflict with a lot of what we knew about the Doctor. But as this episode proves, there are ways of getting around what you think you know about the Doctor. And this episode is really all about that. We thought that this version of the Doctor, the War Doctor, John Hurt's Doctor, had murdered, basically committed genocide twice over. And remember, the Sixth Doctor was put on trial for genocide. The Doctor does not take this sort of thing lightly. But here, we see there's always another way. I mean, that's constantly been one of the great themes of Doctor Who, is that there is another way besides violence and death, if you're willing to look and you're willing to think. And that other way, the Doctor finds it with the Zygons and the humans and negotiates the fairest peace settlement in history. I mean, it's a perfect example of what the Doctor believes. And then here we see the ultimate example of the Doctor finds another way. And this doesn't lessen the pain that his previous incarnations went through. What it does is that pain serves as a penance for the Doctor. The penance for him, that realizing that he really, really was willing to do it. He was willing to cross that line. And if you put a gun to somebody's head and you almost pull the trigger but change your mind at the last second, well, you didn't cross the line. You didn't cross that particular line, but you crossed a lot of lines to get there. And if you do that, you should have to pay some sort of a penance. And all that pain and all that guilt that the 9th and 10th Doctors went through, and that the 11th Doctor still is dealing with, well, that was his penance. And keep in mind, this is the end of the Time War. The Doctor had caused a lot of death and destruction before he got there. Remember, when we saw Paul McGann regenerate into John Hurt's Doctor, we saw him regenerate into young John Hurt. And that sort of shows us that the Doctor did a lot. He racked up a heck of a body count. I mean, all that stuff, like they said, like when the Pandorica opened, about, soaked in the blood of 1 billion galaxies and all that other stuff. That was probably not hyperbole. So, yeah. The John Hurt's, the War Doctor, let's call him that. Yeah, he didn't cross that final line, but he crossed a lot of lines along the way before he turned back at that last moment. Anyway, let's kind of move on. Obviously, we got to see Billie Piper here. Now, I was a little confused. I genuinely thought she was going to be playing Rose Tyler in this, and instead she's playing the Moment. But again, I seriously avoided a lot of the details about what was going to happen in this episode. I wanted to go in completely cold. I mean, obviously I knew that David Tennant was going to be there, but they didn't exactly hide that fact. And it was certainly great to see Billie Piper again. She's awesome. She went out there and she proved so many people wrong when about her being on Doctor Who. And keep in mind, before that, she'd actually been best known as a pop star. I mean, basically, she was kind of like British Britney Spears for a while there. And when she was cast as the Doctor's new companion, and I remember this from back in 2005, people went nuts. And then she came in and proved everybody wrong. So, yeah. And then, of course, there's David Tennant. Well, there's a reason why his incarnation of the Doctor is certainly a fan favorite, because he was great at it. And just seeing the nod to his Doctor's final line, "I don't want to go." Well, of course the 10th Doctor said that because he didn't want to stop being there. He didn't want to stop being the Doctor. He loved being his 10th incarnation, because he'd finally let go of so much of what had been tormenting him during his 9th incarnation. Yes, the pain was still there, but he rediscovered his joy in life. He was willing to let himself be happy again. And it was also very strongly implied that the 10th Doctor sort of viewed regenerating as death. But now here, seeing him interact with his future incarnation, you get the sense that that his feelings of that had been eased. That he was at peace with becoming the 11th Doctor. And of course, his memory would be wiped of this when he goes back in time to pick up where he left off. But the fact that he says, "I don't want to go," we have to wonder if maybe, as much as he didn't want to go, maybe there was, knowing what was coming down the road might have helped give him a little bit of peace. And of course, there's also the dread of knowing that he's going to has to go to Transalore. This is the incarnation where he goes there. Hope and dread, man, kind of just adds so much more to that scene, which is of course one of the all-time great scenes in the series. Let me see here. Oh yeah, of course. There's a I have to say, especially since I watched An Adventure in Space and Time last night, where they're talking about the circle things, the round things on the walls, which of course have been in Doctor Who since the very beginning. I love how he goes like, "What are the round things? I have no idea." It's just like, if you stop and think about it, there've been round things in the TARDIS so much. It's kind of a theme, and I just love the idea that the Doctor does that, even though he doesn't really understand why. It's just something he does. It's great. Anyway, getting back into the thing. There's just so many little nods, that are just so wonderful. Like, the War Doctor just sort of like looking at 10 and 11 like they're crazy with their timey-wimey and the way they speak. He's like, what is wrong with you? And then of course he seems to be kind of cool with it towards the end. And well, what can you say about just seeing all of the Doctors come together? I'm pretty sure they brought David Bradley in to record at least the first Doctor's line of calling the War Council of Gallifrey, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't until at least the third Doctor's incarnation where they named the Doctor's home world. So I'm sure William Hartnell never actually said the word Gallifrey in his life. Or maybe was that from the three Doctors? The people who are much bigger Doctor Who experts than I am, I'm sure, are going to pick that scene apart. But I also, and I might be wrong on this, got this sense that, like the seventh Doctor, I'm pretty sure you could clearly hear him saying a line or two that was never in the original stuff. And I just got me thinking about the picture that the BBC released of the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh Doctors together. I mean, did they actually get these guys to come in and record one or two sentences for their incarnations of the Doctors? Kind of checking in during that scene. I mean, if so, Oh. And it's certainly not as if these guys haven't been keeping themselves busy being the Doctor. There's those Big Finish audio productions, which previous Doctors always tend to get involved in. Like Paul McGann even name-checked the companions he had during those stories in Night of the Doctor. So yeah, and then just seeing them all come together, and then there's that line of, "No, sir, 13," and we get to see that just brief shot of Peter Capaldi's eyes. Oh, I love those moments where you're just about to bust from just the sheer fan geekiness and joy of it all. And then there's the culmination. Even better than that, there was still the conversation between Matt Smith's Doctor and Tom Baker. You know, when I heard Tom Baker's voice, and again, keep in mind, I had no idea he was going to be in this. I just literally like, no way, it can't be. And then we get that amazing scene of them together. And it was so strange watching that, because it's been forever since I watched a Tom Baker episode. But as soon as you said, "Who knows?" it's like, yes, there he is. There's my favorite Doctor. And the Fourth Doctor is my favorite Doctor. As much as I love all the other incarnations, and I do love them all, the Fourth Doctor is my Doctor. He's the one that was there when I got into this show. I mean, I'm not kidding about this. If you actually look in my old high school yearbook, there's a picture of me wearing a Doctor Who t-shirt in my high school yearbook, in a group photo from my club, from when I was in Key Club. So seeing him there again, and seeing that spark that made the Doctor, the Fourth Doctor, the icon that he was, there just are no words for what that did to the fan in me. And it's also so amazing that he even says, you know, when you get that, basically even tells Matt Smith, "I'm a future incarnation of you. I've regenerated so many times, I've decided just to kind of go back to one of my old favorites." One thing that people have repeatedly said in the lead up to this anniversary is they hope for 50 more years of Doctor Who. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Canon. That the Doctor has many, many incarnations ahead of him. It's also canon, established, when the Doctor rewrites history. He says, we rewrite history all the time. Which, of course, goes a long way to explaining why so much of Doctor Who continuity conflicts with itself. But anyway, I mean, there it is, folks. It is now written in stone. There are many, many more incarnations of the Doctor ahead. There is no reason to think that someday when we're old and gray, we might just be able to sit down in front of the TV for the Doctor Who 100th anniversary special. And how amazing would that be? How amazing would that be? And I can't help but imagine what a scene that they might have in that to wrap it all up in a 100th anniversary special. But I would hope it would be something like what we have here at the end of this episode, where we see all the incarnations of the Doctor gathered together. And yeah, okay, this is the special effects there maybe aren't quite as good as we could hope for. I mean, you can obviously tell that these are stills intermixed with John Hurt, David Tennant, and Matt Smith. But still, what a moment. What a moment. And now, there's the future. The Doctor's going to go out there and search for Gallifrey. Peter Capaldi's going to come in. And we're going to see who knows what from him. I'm sure it's going to be great things. And Well, yesterday we saw David Bradley as the first Doctor on an Adventure in Time and Space, and you can't help but wonder, how interesting would it be? The first Doctor and the 13th Doctor. Just a possibility. But, oh man, wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something indeed? So yeah, folks, while there are one or two weak points in this episode, this really serves as a fine tribute to the history of Doctor Who as we could ever hope for. This is an enormous love letter to the show, to the fans, and to a great British institution that has become beloved the world over. And I think that there's really nothing else that you can say except happy 50th anniversary to Doctor Who. And here's to 50 more. However many more there are, I'll be there for them. And I hope you will be there for them too. Until next time, everybody, take care and have a good one.